Hey guys, welcome back to Anime Gossips. This is my recap for the anime Death Note. The story begins in a dark place where two Shinigami are playing a game. However, Ryuk is sitting alone, lost in thought. His friends invite him to join, but he declines. Meanwhile, in a school, every student is busy talking and doing their own activities. Then the teacher asks Light Yagami to translate some sentences. Light starts translating and says, "Follow the voice of God. Then the blessings of the sea will become bountiful, and there will be no storms." While walking, Light hears some news stating that today, around 11 a.m. in Yokohama, Kanagawa Prefecture, they found a man's body in an apartment. He seemed to be around 30 years old and is covered in human tomato juice. The police are investigating this incident. The news anchor tells another story that today, shortly after noon, police arrested Tofuji Naoki, who is 35 years old, as he's connected to the murder of a 25-year-old woman he lived with in the Shibuya district of Tokyo. Light thinks this world is rotten, as the same thing happens again and again daily after hearing about all these incidents. The following day, while Light is in the classroom, he sees a notebook falling from the sky into the garden. At that time, he ignores it, but after school, he goes to check it out. He finds a strange notebook called Death Note, which also includes the rules on how to use it. The main rule is that if you write someone's name in it, then the person will die. Light thinks it's a prank and leaves the Death Note there, thinking it's like a chain letter. He thinks it is impossible that writing someone's name can really make them die. But he again turned back and took the notebook home with him. He read the second rule, which states that for the Death Note to work, the writer must have the person's face in mind when writing their name. If there are people with the same name, they will not be affected. Also, if the cause of death is written within 40 seconds of writing the person's name, it will happen as it is written. If no cause is specified, the person will simply die of a heart attack. After writing the cause of death, details of the death should be written in the next 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Reading the rule, Light thinks he can either let people die without pain or make them suffer. He thinks the prank isn't too bad, as it is possible that writing a name in the book can kill someone. After some time, he gets curious and opens the book to write, but he pauses. He thinks if someone really dies because of this, does that make him a murderer? Then he relaxes, thinking it is impossible and nothing will happen. In the meantime, Light sees a news anchor telling about an incident where a man who eliminated 6 people yesterday in Shinjuku has now taken 8 people as hostage, including children and teachers in a daycare. The police tell the media that the person's name is Otoharada Kuro, and he's 42 years old and doesn't have a job. They're gonna begin negotiations with the suspect. Light writes Otoharada Kuro's name in the Death Note and wonders if he'll really have a heart attack in 40 seconds. He waits for 40 seconds and thinks nothing will happen, but suddenly, he sees on TV that the people the man had kept hostage were now free. He realizes something is happening because the hostages are coming out, and they are all okay. Then he sees the SWAT team entering. The news anchor says the suspect had died inside the daycare center, which shocks Light. The police denied shooting the suspect and said he may have felt trapped and committed suicide. According to one of the hostages, the suspect suddenly collapsed. Light thinks Otoharada Kuro may have had a heart attack, but he can't believe it. He thinks it must be a coincidence. Suddenly, his mom reminded him it was almost 6:30 and asked if he has cram school tonight. Light agrees and gets ready, but in his mind, he starts thinking about the Death Note. He wonders if it really works and thinks to test it out again. To test the Death Note, he decides to choose another criminal, but this time he needs someone famous. That way, if the criminal dies, it will be noticeable, as he wants to see results quickly. Now at school, Light notices a student bullying another student and thinks about whether he should write his name, but he decides to stay away from people around him. But then he thinks, why should he care? No one would notice if someone like him died. At the station, Light hears people screaming, which makes him feel disgusted. He thinks about writing their names in the notebook to get rid of them, believing it will also help society. After that, Light sees 2 bikers teasing a girl. One of the bikers introduces himself as Shibumaru Takuo. They're trying to take off the girl's clothes, and the girl is screaming for help. Light decides to test the Death Note. He writes Takuo's name in the Death Note, which is supposed to make Takuo die. Light wants to see if it really works. Then, after some time, Takuo gets hit by a truck and dies. This makes Light realize that the Death Note is real. Elsewhere, Ryuk tells his friends that it's been 5 days since he dropped his Death Note. His friend tells him that he really made a huge mistake. They ask if he knows where he dropped it. Ryuk says he dropped it in the human world. Ryuk spreads his wings and goes to the human world to see what's happening. Light arrives home. His mother welcomes him and asks about the results. Light shows her his score on the national practice entrance exams. His mom is happy to see he got the top score again. Light agrees and mentions that he is going to study, so don't disturb him. His mom asks if he needs anything, but he declines because he already has everything he wants. He opens the death note and starts laughing while reading the names. Suddenly, Ryuk appears and says that it looks like he is enjoying it. Light is shocked to see Ryuk, but Ryuk asks why he's so surprised. Ryuk tells him that he is the Shinigami who dropped the notebook. Seeing the names in the death note, Ryuk confirms that Light knew that it wasn't an ordinary notebook. Light stands up and tells Ryuk he's not surprised. In fact, he's been waiting for him. He didn't believe the Shinigami's notebook was real at first, but now that he's seen its power, he's sure it is. Ryuk says he's impressed to see Light using the death note in just 5 days. Ryuk tells him that death notes have come to the human world before, but Light is the first to use it so much. Ryuk also tells him that most people might be too scared to use it. Light replies that he is ready to use the death note, and he knows that it belongs to a Shinigami. Now that Ryuk is here, Light asks what will happen to him. Will Ryuk take his soul? But Ryuk denies it and tells him he will not harm him. Ryuk explains that once the death note is in the human world, it's owned by humans. Basically, it belongs to the person who picks it up. Light asks if it's his. Ryuk agrees until he gives it to someone else, and tells him if he gives it to someone else, he'll forget everything about the death note. Light asks if there's a cost for using the death note. Ryuk denies it and says only the fear and pain humans feel after using it. Ryuk tells Light that when he dies, he'll write Light's name in the death note. He warns Light that if anyone uses the death note, they would not be able to go to heaven or hell. Ryuk says that he will find out more after he dies. Suddenly, Light's mom knocks on the door out of nowhere, which scares Light, but Ryuk reassures him not to be afraid and to answer her. When his mom enters, she brings some apples which she got from their neighbor, but she notices how dark the room is and asks what is happening. Light then realizes that his mom couldn't see Ryuk, who is still standing there. He tells Light that the notebook was originally his, but since Light is using it, only he can see Ryuk and hear his voice. Ryuk explains that this makes the death note a connection between Light and himself. Light asks Ryuk why he chose him. Ryuk ignores the question and starts eating the apples. Light asks if Ryuk is listening, and Ryuk says yes, mentioning that apples in the human world are amazing. Light asks Ryuk why he gave him the death note. Ryuk replies that he didn't specifically choose him. He just dropped the notebook randomly. He tells him not to think he was chosen because he's smart, and says it was just chance that the notebook fell near him, which he picked up. Ryuk tells him the instructions explained in English, as English is the most common language in the human world. Light then questions why Ryuk dropped it, saying not to tell him it was an accident after he took the time to write out all those instructions. Ryuk says he dropped the death note intentionally because he was bored. Light finds it strange. Then Ryuk explains that Shinigami these days have a lot of free time. They either sleep or gamble. If other Shinigami see him writing names in the death note, they'll wonder why he's working so hard and laugh at him. Writing the names of other Shinigami doesn't do anything. Ryuk says living in the Shinigami realm isn't fun, so he decided to come to the human world to have more fun. When Ryuk looks at the death note, he sees that Light has written many names in it, but he's surprised that Light only wrote the reason for one person who died when hit by a truck. Light explains that without writing the cause of death, everyone dies of heart attacks, and says it is the best part of the death note. Also, he plans to write down the names of criminals to make the world better by getting rid of evil people slowly. Ryuk wants to know why he is doing this. Light says it's obvious. Someone foolish will easily know that someone is doing it intentionally to get rid of criminals. He wants everyone to know he exists, and that he's the one passing judgment on them. Ryuk asks what's the point in passing judgments on others. Light says he was bored too. A few days ago, Light seemed guilty of eliminating 2 men and thinks that human lives shouldn't be taken so lightly. He questions if he has the right to judge others. However, he justifies his actions by saying that the world is full of bad people who deserve to die, and someone needs to take action against them. Light thinks that even giving up his sense of what's right in his life, things can't stay the way they were before. In the classroom, Light is thinking about the death note and believes that if someone else has it, they can't get rid of bad people like him, remarking that he's the only one who can change the world with the death note. So he starts writing the names of criminals in it. At first, he does it to make the world better by getting rid of bad people, hoping it will stop others from doing evil things in the future. Back to the present, Light thinks that if bad people who deserve punishment suddenly die, and those who hurt others get sick or have accidents, the world will get better. He tells Ryuk he wants to make a world full of good and honest people. Ryuk points out that if that happens, Light will be the only bad person left. Light doesn't understand what Ryuk means and asks what he is talking about. Light says he's likely the smartest, hardest working student in Japan and will become the god of the new world. Then Ryuk finds humans so interesting. And that's the end of the video. Please comment and let me know if you want a recap of the next episode of this anime. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, goodbye.